All right, go.
In 5, 4, 3.
That's tomorrow, and that is it.
In 5, 4, 3.
That's tomorrow, and that is it for us today. And we will leave you with a... I can't do it. We'll do it live.
Okay. Go.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it, and we'll do it live. Fucking thing sucks.
5, 4, 3.
That's tomorrow, and that is it for us today. I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thanks again for watching. We'll leave you with Sting and a cut off his new album. Take it away.
Fireside Chats.
What is up, everybody? It is your boy Lou Martinez, aka Big Chief Burrito, live with you on a Tuesday. Fireside Chats with Big Chief Burrito coming at you live from the Chula Vista Burrito Lounge, San Diego, California. Thank you, everybody that's stopping by. Go ahead and leave a like, a comment when you see this scrolling by. It helps us out. Today, we're going to be talking monster movies, amongst other things. Our guest tonight is somebody who interviewed me when I was part of my first major film festival here in San Diego several years back for KPBS. She is a film critic, arts, entertainment. She also is part of a lot of cool film clubs here in San Diego, bringing a lot of obscure films to the Comic-Con Museum, the Digital Gym, Digital Cinema. She's a great supporter of indie filmmakers as well locally. And she gets to interview celebrities through her platform. We're going to talk about her podcast, Cinema Junkie, good type of junkie. You know, junkies get a bad name, but Cinema Junkie, not so bad, right? So welcome, Miss Beth Accomando.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, I remember interviewing you on the red carpet for the Latino Film Festival.
Absolutely. That was a lot. I still have that as one of my rotating profile pictures where it says my name, KPBS. How you doing today, Beth?
I'm doing good. I'm so glad the heat broke.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It was not fun. I lost power on the hottest day ever recorded in Chula Vista, and we were out for 20 straight hours. It was
Man.
It was, yeah. I've literally had PTSD the entire week because of it. Every time I turn on the fan or turn on a light, I'm like, yeah, my brain was all fried all week from it. It was crazy.
Oh, it was 90 degrees at 1 a.m.
Yeah,
last week.
yeah,
That was insane.
yeah. And the day we had no power is like usually at nighttime I have a big ass window and I open it and we're a little bit on a hill, so there's a breeze coming in for the ocean. But that night it was still. There was like I would feel the breeze sort of start and then it would just go away. It would dissipate. It would just be gone immediately. So I'm glad that that we all got through it. Hopefully, I mean, like I said, living in San Diego, you get the 5-10 really hot days, the 5-10 really cold days, the 5-10 days that it rains, and then you got 330 days of perfect weather. So what are you gonna do about it, right? Absolutely. All right. Well, Beth, let's jump right into it. It's kind of interesting to have you on the show because usually you're on the other end of the
Yeah.
platform, right? So I do enjoy turning the tables on people that normally interview people. I know you have a background and love of film, but when did that translate, or were you like part of like student like newspaper? When did the other aspect, the media side of it, enter into the equation?
Well, I think I have my uncle Joe to thank for that. When I was little, like, I don't know, elementary school or something, I had a list of films that I was keeping. And he would ask me, like, well, what do you think of it? And I would tell him, and he goes, like, well, that's not good enough. You gotta explain to me why you liked it, why you didn't like it, give it a rating, talk about it. And so he kept making me think more and more about the reasons why I liked a film or didn't like a film. And I think those were the roots of my becoming a film critic. But I started at the school paper, UCSD. The idea was I get to go to movies free. Who could turn that down? And I got press kits that had photos and info about the films. And as an 18-year-old, that was a dream come true. So I started writing reviews. And then after my first year of college, they said, well, the paper doesn't come out during the summer. So I was like, oh, I need to find some place to write more film reviews so I can keep going to the movies free. And I got a job at the La Jolla Light. And then from there, I moved on to KPBS. And, I made a lot of films when I was in school. I still edit. I mean, I edit all my own segments for KPBS, which is part of the thing I probably enjoy the most. And so I keep my hands on kind of that creative end of it too.
Do you ever edit anybody else's films or anything like that, or just segments or more media related?
I have in the past. I've worked on a few things. It keeps me humble, but I worked on all the Killer Tomato sequels.
That's right.
So and that was back in the day when we were still editing on film. I edited one project on a 35 millimeter Steenbeck, which is a big flatbed with physical media. It was crazy, but now everything's digital. I haven't really edited on anybody else's film recently, just because I've gotten so swamped with other things to do, and I do a lot of film programming through the Film Geeks group I'm with. So I don't have the time that I would like to have to try and work on film projects and stuff like that.
Do you speaking of, I first edited on an Avid machine that was the size of my bedroom, right? They had to feed and catalog everything manually and then go and pull it back up and stuff like that. So going from that, which is probably the main reason I dropped out of film school, because I was like, oh, I'm reading these trades that say you're going to be able to edit this on just a regular PC, So that was kind of. What do you think do you think that the editing capabilities is the biggest sort of advance in filmmaking over the last 20 years?
It's a mixed bag, I will say. I mean, technology definitely makes film making more accessible to everyone. But the downside of that is that it is more accessible to everyone. So you get a lot more stuff coming out. And, on the end of being a film programmer, or seeing stuff coming through festivals, you get a lot more stuff submitted, and the range, like the quality range, is a lot broader from like the worst to the best. And part of that is because anyone can make a film and it's easy. And part of when I was in film school, I'm going to sound like an old curmudgeon here, but part of the thing was when you had to shoot on film, you had to really plan, because you had to buy your film stock, you had to pay for every foot of that film to be processed. You had to really think about what you were making. And now with video, it's so easy to shoot miles of footage, lots of scenes, many retakes. And I feel like there's a little less planning sometimes, so that the ease of the technology in some ways, I think, can make some people a little lazy. So I think that's,
You got Nolan doing like 35 takes.
And he's shooting on film, though. I think he's one of the few.
No, he's
still. Does he shoot?
Well, no. I'm not talking. No, I'm talking Fincher.
Oh, okay.
Fincher's infamous for having like,
Yeah.
he's happy because he can just make
But
the blood splatter however he wants.
I mean, I miss physical media just because that's what I grew up editing, and there's something really nice about like the physical media. But digital editing is so great because you can make multiple copies, you can save multiple copies, you can try things, and it's so much easier in that respect. You don't have to get a new work print. If you make too many edits, you lose frames, and none of that happens in the digital realm. So, I mean, there's a lot of really great things, but there's a part of me that kind of just misses that tangible touching the film and stuff.
Yeah, sometimes you move something a frame over and then everything else comes out of joint. You're like, wait a minute, what did I do? You try to control Z yourself out of it. Like, wait, what did I just change? Why is everything gone? When I retaught myself Premiere after learning how to edit on Avid, I was like, that was kind of like, oh wow, you're so accustomed to like the finality of some things, or just kind of like how structured the editing used to be, and now it's just very free form. Very, you said you can change, you can have 18, you can try a scene 18 different ways and just scrub through it and see which one works. Take a scene out, see how it works without it. It still takes the same amount of time because you make one cut at minute 6, and then you have to go back and watch the whole thing over to see how it flows. That's the vein of my editing existence. Is even when I'm making changes after I've already established that I like something, I still have to go, okay, let me see how that flows with everything now. So
yeah,
I end up watching my movies like 8,000 times. So you start to love this, and then you start analyzing it early. Then you get into the dissection. You like the perks and the benefits. At what point do you just go all in and say, this is my career? Was it pretty early on? Was there something else that you were sort of pushing towards before this became the norm, or was it pretty early on that you guys decided to go all in on it?
It was pretty early on. I mean, initially when I was little, I wanted to be a zoologist and work in wild animal parks with animals. Especially like I wanted to go to Africa and work in like Kenyan wild animal parks. I love animals. And so I was like very upset about all the poaching that was going on. And that was one of the things that I thought I would go and do. But then, I mean, my dad's the one who gave me my love for movies from the earliest time I can remember. He was always taking me to movies, showing me movies, talking to me about film. He's the one who made me fall in love with King Kong and the Marx Brothers, and got me completely hooked on film from a very young age, as far back as I can remember. And I think I always felt like I was going to do something with film from a pretty early age. At one point I thought, oh, maybe I would teach filmmaking. Then I thought, oh, editing was a thing that really attracted me. I did not want to be on a movie set, really, where everybody's like waiting for you to make a decision. I liked writing and editing, kind of the more solitary professions that are within the film industry. And so I always was kind of gravitating towards that. And, in film school, I made a lot of student films and worked on a few other things, but I just fell into the film review work at KPBS, which, kind of allowed me to still do editing work, not the same as you do in a film, but, I still get to work with that process, which is what I really love.
When you edit because one of the reasons that I do the podcast live is because I don't like to edit myself, and nothing would, if I do an interview and it's an hour and a half, I'm like, all right, let me cut that down to 32 minutes. I would be like, no, it's impossible. So I decided to go all in on the live streams because I was like, whatever happens. And then if I have to trim any major parts, I'll trim it, but I'm not sitting there and like taking all the ums and ahs out of stuff like that. When you're editing for time constraint, because oftentimes you have a set number that you have to hit. Does that enable you to be more cold-blooded about yourself, or cold-blooded with what's happening?
Well, you're forced. I mean, the two things that I have to work with are time constraints, both in terms of the time constraints of the edited piece and the time constraints of working on a news show where, I might interview somebody one day and have to have the story up the next day, or sometimes I'm interviewing somebody that morning and I have to turn that story around for that day. So, you have to be, yeah, you can't get too attached to anything, and you also have to be able to make decisions pretty quickly about like, okay, what is really the core of this story. I talked to this person for 30 minutes. I've got 3 minutes to, put length to put it on the air. I've got like 4 hours to edit this thing. I can't be sitting here going like, oh, I don't know. And a lot of times I will say that because I've been doing this for a long time, when I'm interviewing people, a lot of times people will say something and it immediately clicks like, oh, that's the hook to get people into the story, or that's something I haven't heard before, or that's something that gives me an insight into what you're doing. And so, sometimes the editing process is starting when I'm doing the interview. And I'm already like in my head kind of going like, this is great, or this is where I want to start the piece, or, oh my God, I love what you said. So that definitely, and yeah, at the end of every day, I mean, let's put it this way, no matter what you edit and no matter how you edit, you're never satisfied with it. I mean, even if you're creating a project and you don't have any time constraints except the ones you put on it, no matter when you finish that thing, you always look at it and go like, I wonder if that was really the best choice, or, oh, I wonder, that other soundbite was great. I wish I could have stuck that in or kept it in. I mean, I think it's an endless process if you allow it to be. So having those kind of deadlines for me is great because it forces me to have to make decisions. But everything I've done, I look back on and go like, yeah, I could have done that a little better.
Is there like a never ending like stream of like, well, we only had 3 minutes, but this is the 7-minute version of that interview that I really, really like, stuff like that lives kind of in your head? Or
well, sometimes I'm fortunate that, what goes on the air for radio and TV has very strict time constraints. But with the website and with podcasting, a lot of times I'm able to say like, oh, I did this. I mean, that's part of the reason why the Cinema Junkie podcast came up, is I was doing a lot of interviews and I said, I just talked to David Cronenberg for 45 minutes and all I got to use was 3 minutes of his interview. Like, there's got to be some place where I can put this to use because it was great. So one of the things I pitched when I was pitching for the podcast at KPBS is I said, look, I have this archive of interviews that we've used like a fraction of. And back when I was starting, a lot of times the publicity tours would give you like one-on-one interviews for 45 minutes, an hour with people like Clive Barker and Ian McKellen and John Woo, Chow Yun-fat. And I was like, wow, I have all this, material and I'd love to use it somehow. And so that's where kind of the roots for Cinema Junkie came, with that notion of like, there's all this material being left on the cutting room floor. Is there some place where I can put it where people can enjoy it? And so sometimes even with like midday segments, I might do an 8-minute segment and say like, hey, this interview really plays best at 15. Can we go ahead and for the podcast version, let the longer version run? And a lot of times they'll let me do that. So it's really nice to be able to have that option.
what got cut from the Cronenberg interview? What did you guys think?
Everything. I mean, when you talk to somebody for 45 minutes and you have a 5-minute segment, what do you get to use? Like practically nothing. I mean, I will say one of the reasons I mentioned that interview because it has one of my absolute favorite quotes I've ever gotten from a filmmaker. And he basically said, he goes, I'm not interested in comfortable cinema. And that just perfectly sums up why I love him, why he's unique. And, his point was, he says, Hollywood is interested in comfort. And he says, that's not what I'm interested in. And, I think that sort of defines what I look for in movies too. I mean, I love a good comedy or something that makes me feel good. But what I really like to seek out, what I love is that stuff that just kind of pushes your boundaries and makes you a little uncomfortable. I'm sponsoring a screening of a film called Speak No Evil coming up at Digital Gym on the 17th this weekend. And it's a Danish film. It's a slow burn. I am so excited to see it in a theater. I saw it at Virtual Sundance because I want to see how people squirm watching that movie. It's it's brilliant. It's not your typical horror film, but it just makes you so tense and uncomfortable. I wanted to fast forward to the end because I was just going, I need to know how this turns out because it could go really bad or it could be like not so bad, but I don't want to sit for another 2 hours waiting to find out. But I resisted, and it was totally worth it. And sometimes it's hard to convince people to go for one of those films that is a grind, but a good grind, like a really cathartic kind of craft. I mean, you feel like this craft going through it the whole time, and you just succumb to it and just go like, oh, I love it. I mean, I love somebody who can really kind of make me squirm.
Well, there's movies that make you squirm because of subject matter, because of cringe, because of just shot selection, because of story and stuff like that. So it kind of it can go one way or the other pretty sideways. You think of a movie like I don't know, like Salo or something like that. That's more just uncomfortable because of what you're seeing, and just was like, oh, okay, you're beating me to death with this fascism, but and other stuff like that. But then there's other films that do you ever find that there's movies that you enjoy, but they are a bit uncomfortable, or they are a bit powerful, that perhaps you only want to watch them once?
Yeah, I mean, I would say a film like Gaspar Noé's Irreversible. I'm
Yeah,
not sure
that's
a film I can return to very often.
Yeah.
I thought it was brilliant. I remember seeing that at a press screening, and I think by the end there were only 2 critics left in the theater. It was me and one other person.
Yeah.
Everybody else had walked out at a certain point. But I mean, I think that film is brilliantly crafted, and as chaotic as it feels in terms of some of the scenes, it feels so carefully mapped out in terms of like the director's point of view. And, for me, just putting up gore or something that's uncomfortable to watch because of just that element really doesn't do much for me. I need to feel like the filmmaker is really crafting something and has a point. If all you want to do is try to gross me out, that's not going to do much for me. But it's those films like Speak No Evil. I mean, it upsets you because you get engaged with the characters, you care about them. It's not that you're seeing a lot of violence or uncomfortable things on the screen, but your concern for them builds this tension that's almost unbearable. I mean, I think that's what the Korean films do really well, is they make you care about their characters, and then they do horrific things to them. And then like you're totally sucked in, and then you're just torn apart because you're going, no, you're not going to do that. You're not going to kill that person in the last scene. They do.
I think for me, a couple of films that and literally when I was making that reference, I didn't know, should I use Irreversible or Salo as the example here, and then you went with the other one. But there's also really, for example, for me, film that I don't really want to watch again that I do think was brilliant is something like City of God, the Brazilian film, which I think is incredibly powerful, but it takes you on such a roller coaster of emotions. It makes you love, it makes characters and just violence and stuff like that. It's beautiful, but it's also like I've already been there. Another one for me would be like The Pianist, which I, obviously, you can say what you want about the directors, but it is a brilliantly made film. But it's just so powerful and so strong that you don't want to put yourself emotionally through that again.
Yeah, no, and there's a lot of films like that. There's another film, a Lena Wertmüller film called Seven Beauties, which it's basically about somebody who survives, the war, but it's like, at what cost has he survived? Has he sacrificed everything that kind of makes him human in order to do that? And so there are films like that where the journey of the character is so painful that it's hard to watch it repeatedly.
Of us? Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. I think we both popped out there for a second. Sorry.
No.
You were saying, I think I got you after you said Seven Brides, right?
Oh, Seven Beauties.
Seven Beauties, sorry.
Is a Lena Wertmüller film, but it's the notion of like, what do you sacrifice to survive, and is that cost too high? Is it worth it to survive at any cost, or do you can you possibly lose your humanity along the way?
Another one would be the movie that never should have been remade by Spike Lee, and that, of course, is Old Boy. Um,
Oh,
for some for some reason, Josh Brolin and Spike Lee decided to remake that, and they could have made literally any other movie and it would have been great. But why did you have to remake Old Boy? And I remember specifically when they were asking Spike during the tour, and he was like, "They're like, Spike, which movie of yours would you like to see remade?" And he was like, "None of them." But then why did you remade Old Boy? So, how do you feel about remakes in general?
well, I will never have a blanket response of like a remake should never be done, because you got to remember John Carpenter's The Thing, and the Magnificent Seven is a remake of The Seven Samurai. I mean, there are some excellent remakes out there, but I think the key to a remake is you really have to have a vision for why you're remaking it. I mean, Carpenter, the original Thing had a particular context that it was made in. It was this notion of, Americans being afraid of kind of the outside world, being invaded by Russia, or in this case, aliens. And so there was a very specific political and social context that film was made in. And when Carpenter revisited it, he had a real reason for making it. This was Reagan era America. There was this sense of paranoia, not trusting anyone. And he completely reconceived it. But he didn't brush off the fact that it was a remake. He didn't pretend like this is some original idea, but he says like, I want to revisit this, but I have a reason for it. And same thing, like Magnificent Seven was really fascinating because, Akira Kurosawa, when he made Seven Samurai, was basically ripping off American Westerns and making them in a form that was culturally fitting for him. And then America kind of took it back, and in this kind of ironic sense of like, oh, wait, you borrowed from the Western to turn it into a samurai saga, and we're going to borrow the samurai saga back and turn it back into a Western. But that film was great. And it was, it understood what about the film it wanted to keep and how it wanted to reimagine it. So I would not make a blanket statement of never make a remake, but if your main reason for doing a remake is money, and by money, I just mean if there's a popular film and you want to remake it because the studio feels confident in greenlighting a remake because there's a built-in audience that may come to see it, like that's not the right reason.
Yeah, no, hey, Kidding You Never Dies. Thanks for stopping by.
Hey, Keithan.
No, absolutely. I mean, obviously Old Boy comes to mind. The shot-by-shot remake of Psycho comes to mind. Like those almost seem like film school exercises,
Yeah.
And I understand it, but there's so much more that you could do in the world of cinema, et cetera, et cetera. We are talking live. Thanks for stopping by, Keithan, with Beth Accomando, sorry, from Film Geeks, from Cinema Junkie. And we're talking about her event as well. Film Geeks present Secret Morgue 3.1 When Animals Attack, Saturday, September 24th at the Comic-Con Museum. One ticket gets you 4 films, 1 meal, introductions by scientists, an art show, pop-ups, bonkers ass cinema authors selling and signing books, and trivia prizes. Doors open at noon. Tell us a little bit about this event coming up.
Sure. We had an idea. Well, my friends and I frequently go to the New Bev when they do their horror marathon in the fall. And we enjoyed it so much, but it's like getting Comic-Con tickets. You have to get on there. The tickets sell out in like 5 minutes. You're not guaranteed you're getting in, or all your friends will get in. And we thought like, hey, what if we did our own version of this down here in San Diego, did a horror marathon and ran it all night. And so a few years, right before the pandemic, we did our first ones, and it was a blast. And first time, I think we did 7 films. Second one, we did 6. We picked themes for it because it's kind of in the basement of the Comic-Con, in their little cinema down there. We came up with the idea of a secret morgue. And the idea is we don't tell you what the films are. You have to trust us, but we will pick a theme. We'll let you know what that is. This year, it's Animals Attack. This is what we're calling a mini morgue because we did one on Witches Night back in April where it was 6 films. So this is just going to be 4. You'll have to trust us. Our goal in programming There's about 4 of us that are programming, but our goal is get you one film that you know and love, one film that you've heard of, but maybe have never actually had a chance to see, and hopefully one film that maybe you've never heard of or never seen. And I think we may have hit that balance with this one. We'll see after each morgue. You know, I check in with people who are there, and almost every time we've managed to find something that people just were like, wow, where'd you get that one from? So it's a lot of fun. And this year we decided, because we are focusing on like different animals in each of these films, why not have a scientist come out and give us some actual interesting, fun facts about the creatures involved, or their psychology, or what's really dangerous about them, and what's been hyped up in films. And I do like, part of what Film Geeks likes to do is we do like to show films in some sort of context. It doesn't have to be a serious context, but the idea that films fit into something bigger, and if we can give you like a little bit of information or something that makes that a little richer experience in some way, shape, or form, whether it's through the filmmaker or somebody who can comment on it, then, you know, we like to do that.
And I put the link in the comment section, and I'll put it in the description as well for anybody that wants to come check it out. Keithan had a question. Where does the name Accomando come from?
Well, if you want to believe the stories of our family history.
You're from the Bronx, right?
I'm from the Bronx, yes, but it goes back a few generations before that. The story I was told is that I think it's my great-great-great-great-grandfather was actually from Germany, and his name was Ackerman. And he supposedly killed someone and fled to Italy and changed his name to Accomando to sound more Italian. So
Gorlami.
It's an Italian name, but I'm not sure it's a genuinely Italian name. And supposedly, I think it was a later relative who, the reason he fled to the United States then was somebody shuffled his feet disrespectfully in front of my, I think, great-grandmother. And he killed or beat them up and then had to flee the country. So those are the stories I was told as a child. I have no idea. I cannot verify the truth on these at all.
That's pretty intense. That's pretty intense. So what you're telling me without telling me is that you guys have a secret advanced copy of Moose Jaws that you're going to show.
I will reveal nothing.
Okay, because
no hints, no clues.
Because
nothing.
If you're showing a secret version of Moose Jaws, then I would love to be there. Actually, what just got confirmed? Tusk 2 is going to get done.
Oh wow!
Yeah, they said he's going to do it for the 2024 for the 10-year anniversary. They're going to do Tusk 2.
Technically, that's not an animal attack. I would.
Okay. Say. We'll get into that we'll get into that a little bit later.
Oh yeah, we had lots of discussions about that. But part of the fun part of doing it is, you know, I work with a few other people, and I mean, one of them is Matt Rotman, who wrote Bonkers Ass Cinema, and my friend Josh Sutton has been with Film Geeks for a long time, and then we kind of coerced this other friend of ours, John Von Gunten, and Sterling Anno, who's with the Oceanside Film Festival. And, you know, we have some crazy ass arguments about what films need to be included and what films don't. And what tends to happen is we each tend to champion a film and go like, this is the one I really want. And then it has so far worked out where everybody's championing something different, and we're all kind of good with that. And so it's like we each kind of bring one film into the fold, and that tends to work out.
Do you find that sort of because I as a lot of people know that, you know, I was a guest curator, and I've been working with the San Diego Latino Film Festival for the last couple of years, doing interviews for them, helping them as much as I can, because I think they're one of the best run film festivals. And I did a rant recently about a local film awards that I called a money grab, because after I saw what it takes to do a yearly festival, getting behind the curtain, seeing how the sausage is made, it is literally impossible to do a quarterly film festival and put as much effort into it as you do with a legitimate film festival. It's also completely illegitimate to ask people to submit a film and charge them $30. You want to submit it for best acting, that's an extra $30. You want your script considered for best writing, that's an extra $30, etc., etc. So getting a little bit, having the experience of being both a creative and interviewer and seeing that, does that change how you kind of see the industry as a whole and kind of the festival circuit and things like that, how they run, how they operate?
Well, I think each festival has a very different personality. So, there's some festivals in town that I just can't wait for. And, there's some festivals that I've had bad experiences with, and, I'm just not that eager to attend. But, I think we're really blessed to have people like Ethan Vantillo with the San Diego Latino Film Festival, who, he gives film geeks a home through Digital Gym Cinema, where he lets us program whatever crazy stuff we want. And that's like a dream come true, being able to do that. And I really admire Brian Hu over at the at Pack Arts and the Asian Film Festival, where I love like Ethan, he has a wonderful mix of films that push the envelope, but are also, he also has some crowd pleasers for the more mainstream audience. But he does a great job programming there. And Antonio Iannota at the Italian Film Festival. I mean, we're really fortunate to have some festivals like this, and Michael McQuiggan over at Film Out, who are not looking to just program like the film with the biggest buzz, or the most mainstream film, or the film that's going to please everyone, or the warm and fuzzy film. That's not the only thing they're interested in. They're also interested in finding those films that are from independent filmmakers, that push the envelope, that challenge audiences. And festivals, I think, are really the place to do that. I should also mention the San Diego Jewish Film Festival. I mean, one of the things I love about the Jewish Film Festival is they really foster discussion at their screenings. And I love that. And I think festivals are a place where you can have films that might not do well anywhere else, and it might be your only chance to see them. So I really appreciate what festivals do in terms of the opportunities they offer us to hear voices that we don't hear everywhere. But yeah, I mean, I know that there are festivals that charge outrageous fees to submit their films, $100 or $150 with absolutely, no consideration for, are you a student filmmaker? Are you somebody facing, financial difficulties? There are festivals, I think, that exist as financial organizations, designed to make money to keep going. But then I think there are festivals that are designed to really lift voices that are not heard often. And by that, I don't just mean like diversity in terms of race and gender, but also diversity in terms of the type and style and genres of filmmaking. And so, what the goal of a festival is can be very different. And then that makes the personality of the festivals very different. So I admire the ones that are really about the art and about getting films out there that might not be seen any other way. Those are the ones that I gravitate to and that I enjoy. So
I admire your towing the line of, while I just burn bridges sporadically as I walk by.
I've burned a few bridges, trust me.
No, I completely understand. There's movies there's niche festivals, and when you're a filmmaker, you really need to find what your movie is about, what the niche festivals are, spend your money there. I did a rant the other day where I was, like I said, I'm talking about it locally. There's the San Diego International, which is, I guess, the most prestigious from San Diego. It's a little snotty.
I would dispute that, but yes, I mean I would dispute the most prestigious.
Oh well, in terms of like that's the festival in San Diego where you will have major openings like Whiplash and places like that where they'll open a big movie now and then. But I think it's probably just because they've been around for a long time and they're in La Jolla and they're a little snooty and they probably have they have the biggest donor list, I guess, probably. But I did a rant a few years ago about that because we got a film in on the because they have an alliance with the 48 where they screen the best of each year. And then when I went to go pick up our badge because we were part of the festival, we got like the lowest like day pass badge, no access to any of the parties, no access to any VIP or nothing. And I was like, what's the worst thing that could happen that a bunch of local filmmakers get hyped up and come attend your festival and mingle with the celebrities that you invited? Why would you treat us like second-class citizens? If you didn't want us to be part of the festival, then don't invite us to the festival. Just say you're not. But if you're going to if you say, oh, yes, you're part of the festival, but you don't get an artist badge, that's bullshit. The other thing is San Diego Latino. They just did their early bird was $10. Some festivals, their early bird is like $30-$40. That's not even like Sundance. And some festivals even charge on a late fee. They were charging $75 for a local festival on a category called oldie but goodie, which means if you had a movie from a few years ago and you wanted a chance to have it shown in a theater, you could submit it for $75 fucking dollars with no guarantee that anybody was going to watch it. And also, I happen to know that this festival had a policy where you could watch the first 5 minutes of a movie, and if you didn't like it, you could just skip it and give it a rating. So from my perspective, being part of San Diego Latino Film Festival ruined me because when I was asked to judge for other festivals, I asked a couple of questions. They were like, no. And then when I asked, why are you charging this much? This is fucking exorbitant. It's a fucking money grab. Well, that's how other festivals do it. Why are you charging extra for different categories? That's how other festivals do it. And I'm sorry, that is not an excuse. That is not an excuse to just to do money grabs and gouge filmmakers when they're struggling to meet budgets. I mean, filmmakers already waste money submitting to Sundance and festivals that they're not going to get into because they just want to feel like they're doing it. But when the local festival does, anyway, that's my rant. Sorry, I'll stop before I go too far. We had a question here while we were talking from Keithan. Are you a bigger fan of kaiju or horror films? I know you love Godzilla.
Well, that's a tough call. And I would say that like Gojira is both kaiju and horror because that first film, if nobody has seen the original Gojira in its Japanese form, not the King of the Monsters that was re-edited with Raymond Burr inserted in, that is a horror film. That is about the horror of, dropping the bomb. I would say that I have greater affection for kaiju in terms of just, kaiju. I mean, Godzilla is, close to my heart. But horror, I think, is a broader and richer genre. I mean, there's more variety within the genre of horror than, within like the kaiju genre. So I think I feel more challenged by the horror genre, but I have more deep affection for kaiju. And you can listen. I just went through screen drafts with Graham Skipper and Drew McTweeney, where we had to rank the top 13 Godzilla films. And oh my God, it was fun, but I was so stressed out the whole time because you have to figure out a strategy for like how to get the films you love onto that list without them being vetoed or, calculating what their picks are going to be. And if they're liking films that are very different from yours, then which of the films on your list do you have to absolutely make sure get on there? So that was brutal, but that just came out today, I believe. But that's screen drafts.
What is your favorite, being from the Bronx, what is your favorite Edgar Allan poem?
Edgar Allan Poe?
Poem? He's from the Bronx. He's from the Bronx. You should know this.
He's from Baltimore, isn't he?
Didn't he have a house in the Bronx too?
I don't know. I don't remember that. I remember him being from Baltimore, but
maybe I got my mistake. Maybe I got my question from my Miguel Rodriguez.
I mean, the Raven is always a favorite.
No, correct answer was Annabelle Lee. Thank you for playing that. um, I have a couple of other topics here I wanted to talk with you about. There's been a sort of a conversation that's been ongoing. I'll actually hear one more from Keith in here. Is Jaws a horror film?
Oh yeah, I think so.
I think so.
I mean, horror. I mean, I think all horror has to do is elicit a sense of fear and build tension. Yeah, I think Jaws is definitely horror. And if you want a different version of horror, go see Speak No Evil this weekend. That is a different class of horror. I don't want to use the word elevated horror because I don't really like that, but it's what's so unique about this one is it builds the tension and fear out of the characters' terror of being socially awkward. And it's like, if they had just listened to their gut responses and not worried about whether they were being polite or impolite, then they might have done the right thing and escaped the fate that they ended up with. But it's brilliant.
Do you like those sort of like it follows things like that, where it's sort of like it sort of takes a traditional horror trope and puts it on its side?
Yeah, I thought It Follows was quite well done. And again, I mean, there's different kinds of horror. That one I think was very atmospheric. And again, it got you on the edge of your seat because you just really didn't know where it was going to go. And I appreciated the craft of that film because it shows you something very horrific visually at the beginning. And then it really doesn't have to do that again because that's already in your head. And your mind is already working overtime, wondering what kind of horrible things can happen to these people. And I think that's a really clever way to craft a film like that.
Was Audition a romance movie?
Romance horror?
Romance horror.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Every time somebody asks me to recommend a rom-com, I always recommend.
So, I mean, the best rom-com in the world is Shaun of the Dead.
Okay, true.
But no,
or Point Break.
The most horrific thing for me to watch actually are rom-coms. I just watched one recently called Spin Me Round that was so terrifyingly bad. I had to take a break halfway through and watch another movie to cleanse my palate before I could go back and finish it.
Does that happen often where you have to watch something and becomes kind of homework because you just turned off on it halfway, or do you usually get to curate?
I will not review a film that I do not watch entirely through. But yeah, there are times when watching the film is work. There's other times when it's an absolute pleasure. And a blast. But yeah, there are times when, like I said, that Spin Me Round was one of the worst things I've seen in a long time. And I was just like, my jaw was on the floor going like, oh my God, how bad? How long can this be so bad for?
This is with the girl from
Alison Brie.
Alison Brie, right? Yeah.
Oh my God. I don't know why. It's funny because I was reviewing it. And when I was writing the review, I was going like, an innocuous rom-com, even if it's bad, shouldn't upset me this much. But I was so angry at it because it just did everything. Like everything it did offended me on a certain level.
That's
and
a good.
I just,
That's a good question for the chat. If anybody's watching, tell us what movie pissed you off the most. What movie did you couldn't finish watching it? What was your, either because it was cringe or was just too bad? I'm thinking there's movies that I've watched that I'm like, but some of them were like, they were so like a movie that you like Moonfall recently. Like that was something where it's like, what are they doing? And they just were going for it, just multiple points of just WTF, just all over the place. So,
well, but that's different. So, I mean, in fact, I think you might be talking to Matt Rotman at some point, but he wrote the Bonkers Ass Cinema book. And, one of the things we discussed when I interviewed him, and this is something I feel strongly about too, is, the idea of guilty pleasures in bad movies. like there is nothing I feel guilty about liking if I genuinely like it. And a bad movie to me is a movie that is bland or mediocre. It's a film that has like no passion, no, nothing to engage you. Movies that have small budgets, or the filmmaker may not be that great, but they're films that are made with a passionate commitment to make those films. There is still something really watchable about those movies. I mean, Ed Wood is a classic example. I mean, his films may be bad, in an objective sense of like, oh, that's a cardboard set, or his actor died, and you can overtly look at this and kind of objectively say like, these are things that we don't consider good filmmaking. But you cannot challenge his passion to get those films made at any cost. And so, if a filmmaker is passionate about something, a lot of times it makes the film watchable on a level that some of these mainstream Hollywood films I just find insufferable. Like I really have a hard time getting through them. The definition of bad, it's something that's very personal in terms of like, how do you use it?
They're so bad it's good, just bad. And then there's like I guess there's also a trend of people trying to make things intentionally bad to try to capture that, like the Room moment, or that Ed Wood moment. And since you mentioned Ed Wood Film School, we are required to let Ed Wood know that are one of my side projects and my film specific podcast and segments that I do is called Ed Wood Film School, and we have a logo for that. So whenever we whenever we do film competitions, we play under that name, Ed Wood Film School. I wanted to touch on a couple of other things with you. One of the things I wanted to ask you is about your interviewing techniques and the research that you do for when you conduct interviews, especially with people that you might admire. But also, there's a side subject to that, which is the theory or the thought process that at a lot of levels. And of course, we talk a lot about diversity and filmmaking and stuff like that on my many podcasts. But at a lot of levels, filmmaking for a lot of auteurs is sort of an elite art, or it used to be sort of an elitist art, meaning that people that might have the time to pursue being filmmakers, being directors, can often come from backgrounds of privilege. And do you ever, when you're interviewing filmmakers, get a sense of their sort of detachment from like an art process that might be a little more difficult to get to? I know it might seem like an odd question, but when you're interviewing somebody about their art, do you ever get a sense of whether they come to their art from a place of privilege, as in they never really had the need to worry about getting a job or anything, and could just focus strictly on making movies and art, versus somebody who might have had to come up and struggle and had a little bit more of a difficulty time getting to make their art?
Well, since I tend to gravitate towards like genre films, I'm not interviewing the Steven Spielbergs. I'm interviewing, indie horror filmmakers and foreign filmmakers. And so I don't think that's really something that comes up as often as you might think, because I think a lot of the people who work in genre films and, are people who are taking their films around through festivals, I think they are people who probably have had to work a little harder and struggle a little harder to get their funding. I don't think a lot of them have had, their careers like handed to them on a platter. Right. So I think basically just because of the kinds of films I tend to cover and the kind of people I tend to get access to, I don't think that's really come up as much. And I'm much more focused on just, what it is that obsesses you as an artist. Why is it that you have to make films? I mean, those are the people that I want to talk to. I want to talk to the people who absolutely have to make a movie. Like there's no other choice for them. One thing I like to point to is this series called The Incredibly Strange Film Show that Jonathan Ross did. I think he did it in the late 80s or early 90s. But every half-hour episode focused on a different filmmaker. Probably the best known of them were people like John Waters and John Woo. And this is John Woo, like while he was still in Hong Kong. But then, he also focused on people like Doris Wishman, who made these like nudie cuties, and Herschel Gordon Lewis, who made horror films. And every half hour, I was so inspired to want to go out and pick up a camera and make a movie, no matter how bad or how cheap it was, because those people were so passionate about having to make a movie, even if it took them 30 years, even if it took all the money they had, even if they had to hawk their house, whatever. And I think that show should be shown in film school. Like that show should be shown to people, because if you don't have that kind of conviction, then you shouldn't be making movies. Like you should go find another job. And so those are the type of filmmakers I try to talk to. And so mostly the conversation is really about, what is it that drives you to make a film?
Okay, that makes sense. I guess it makes sense that you wouldn't necessarily be talking to, the filmmakers that I'm sort of referring to, like that are more that you would more commonly associate with that. But
yeah,
got it. Now when you are interviewing people, especially people like if you're interviewing Cronenberg or somebody else that you've admired in the past, like are there anything you say to yourself, anything that you remind yourself of, or anything that you were taught that helps you sort of keep from fangirling too much, or from going on? What do you? And of course, I'm saying that I'm coming from a place of jealousy, because I have I'm not landing the size interviews that you have, so that's kind of why I'm wondering, like, is there a secret sauce to sort of being cool in those situations?
I can confess to you the time I was not cool. I got a chance to interview. I interviewed Chow Yun-fat a number of times, and I adore him. And I think he's in a lot of these John Woo films, Hong Kong action star. He's amazing. But I had interviewed him once where I had like an hour-long interview in LA, and we chatted, and it was for Giant Robot magazine, and he was fabulous. And then I got a second interview for when he did his first Hollywood film. And there was a press day, and I had to drive up to LA with a friend who was going to run the audio for me. It was raining. I barely made it there on time. I was a little bit stressed. I come into the room where he's doing the interview. He grabs my hand. He kisses me on both cheeks, and he goes, "Beth, so wonderful to see you again. How are things in San Diego?" I was like that 12-year-old girl in the audience in Hard Day's Night who's like just,
Right.
besides herself being at a Beatles concert. Like I forgot every question in my head. I was so embarrassed. My friend who was doing the audio was laughing at me, like not even hiding it. And I thought in my head, I was going like, oh, he has a very good publicist who's reminded him who I am. I'm from San Diego. But it was just this moment where I completely lost it. That's the only time I really ever did the ridiculous kind of like fangirly and just like completely lost my train of thought. But I mean, I think most of the time I go in there and most of my research is just watching the films. I mean, to me, that's what I want to talk about. I don't want to talk about, I'm not as interested in a lot of the behind the scenes stuff or personal stuff. It's like, I want to get into the films and like, why did you make these choices? How did you make these choices? Why are you obsessed, with this particular thing? And again, because of horror, like, what are you, Mr. Cronenberg, why are you obsessed with this particular, genre of horror? What is it that influenced you? What are the things that scare you? And I mean, I think one of the key things to being a good interviewer and what I try to do is like really listen to what they're saying. It's not important what I think or what I want to say about the films. I can add those things like to an intro or to, text that I'm doing. I I really want to try to listen to what they're saying and give them a platform to talk at length about what it is they want to do. And, that's kind of what I try to focus on. And if you're listening carefully, then you're going to hear things that they say that you want to ask that follow-up question to. I try to prep a good set of questions. I try to think like, what are the things that they're probably asked all the time? And how can I ask the things that maybe are different? And can I find the things that are very personal for me in their films that make me really identify with those movies? And can I get them to talk about that thing? Because maybe if I focus on the thing that's personal to me, maybe it's a different angle of coming at their films than they've had before. And so, I don't want them to be bored. I mean, I've done interviews where I feel like, oh my God, there's nothing I'm asking that's new. And
Right.
the person feels like they're on, a recorded message. Like, I'm going to give you the stock answer back, and
Yeah, that's definitely that. I definitely felt that when I started doing the Q&As for the festival, which were live, and they would tell me, okay, Lou, you're going to do the Q&A for these 10 movies, and sometimes I would get to watch, because unfortunately, you can almost do a Q&A for a movie without really knowing that much about it. You can ask very generic questions, and sometimes I'll catch, like anytime I hear an interview, I heard an interview with somebody the other day, and they were interviewing Chris Estrada from the Hulu show This Fool, and I was prepping for a panel on the show, and I listened to this interview, and this lady asked them the most generic like film festival question. She was like, "This seems like a love letter to Los Angeles." And I was like, wow, she did not watch the show at all, because there was nothing. When I think love letter to a city, I think like long drawn out shots and making the normal, the mundane look beautiful, stuff like that. And I could just tell that she had not watched any part of the show. But I do love, I think that the reason that they like that, and then when I started doing the panels and the Q&As for the festival, is that, maybe Moises and Juan, who usually do the Q&As, they look at it from a curator standpoint. They're talking about the film, and I was more looking at it and talking as another filmmaker. So I would talk and ask a lot of questions about process, etc. How many setups did it take for this shot? What was, I really liked this edit. Was there any issues with it? Stuff like that. And that sort of seems to gravitate. But when I'm interviewing people more like about their lives and their passions, I do like to look at other interviews so that I don't ask the same things. And then I look for that moment when they say, that's a good question. And then my head grows 2 hat sizes. Anytime I get that, oh, that's a good question, I'm like, yes, give me that. I need that. If you could interview any filmmaker that you wanted, or be a part of the editing team for any adaptation of a movie that you wanted, which one would you choose?
I would always like to have dinner with Francis Ford Coppola and Martin Scorsese. That would be a dream. Like, to be able to do an interview chatting with them over a meal. Part of that reason is I grew up at a time when they were coming out of film school, and I was thinking about a career in film, and they were like, the brash young American new wave. They were Italian like I was. They were, Scorsese was from New York. They had Catholic upbringing that probably scarred them. I do want to point out the best horror filmmakers are all like somehow Catholic or raised Catholic or related. There's something about that I think finely tunes you into horror. So to me, that would just be the most fun. I think that would be enjoyable to sit down for an Italian dinner with those two and talk about movies, not just their movies, but just talk about movies. And, from the younger directors now, like Edgar Wright, I mean, I would love to talk to people who love movies, and Guillermo del Toro. I mean, those are people who it wouldn't just be about their particular films. I mean, they seem to have a breadth of knowledge about cinema history, and I think that's really interesting as well. So I think that would be a lot of fun. I mean, when I was young, I would have given anything if I could have been part of a Monty Python team of comedy. I don't think I'm funny enough by any means, but like what they did and what they put on the screen,
So I
I
had
just
that hat with the.
adored.
Sorry, I have my killer rabbit hat. See, it's no ordinary rabbit. It's got these fangs. You know what I would ask Francis Ford Coppola to end our interview? I would ask him when he realized his daughter surpassed him as a director. And then he would kick me out.
Well, you know, it's funny. I got to interview Sofia Coppola when she had done The Virgin Suicides.
Wow.
And at that time, there were a lot of people writing about the film and her saying, well, her dad must have helped her. You know, I mean, I guess if you want to talk about privilege, she's probably like,
yeah,
you know, somebody who came from.
They used to make home movies and go away on vacations and have film competitions within the family. Of course, she learned from him. Of course, he helped her.
But it helped her. But the way, the tone of it at that time was so weird because Virgin Suicides was obviously not a film that looked or felt anything like a Francis Ford Coppola film.
No.
It was very much a young girl's perspective.
Absolutely.
And I just felt like there was a certain kind of weird disrespect that she couldn't have possibly created this on her own. Not that she had no influence. I mean, I know her father supported her. I know that she learned from him. But the idea that somehow he made that film happen and it was as good as it was because of him was just weird because it was so much. And, you know, as her subsequent films came out, like she has a very distinct voice of her own. You know, some people may not like what she focuses on or that interested in it. But I mean, I think she has a very distinctive cinematic voice. And I mean, I love her stuff.
Yeah, Marie Antoinette, I even liked. That was, you know, obviously Lost in Translation. That she's come into her own. Obviously, you know, it's easy to get your first movie made when you're Francis Ford Coppola's daughter. But I mean, I'm not going to hold that against her as long as it's something, you know, as long as she's got the skill to back it up. I'll be all right with it.
And she just appeared on What We Do in the Shadows. That gives her some cachet too.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to see when you hold on a second. When you okay, two more topics and then I have a funny a bit for us. When you in the interview game or in the film critic game, I don't know how much you are on Twitter, but there's this sort of not new trend, but with Letterboxd and the internet and Twitter Spaces and vlogs and everything, where there's a lot of kids or younger film critics, and they're watching movies and films from my era, your era, which aren't too far apart, and they're sort of reviewing them as first time, and they're putting out there like, you know, like just, I don't know, Cocktail with Tom Cruise, right? Which is kind of like a weird movie to sort of look through the lens of 2022, right? Or, you know, other movies like that, you know? And at first I was like, yeah, I mean, yeah, more people liking movies, more people talking about movies. Yes, yes, yes. But then at some point, there was I just so inundated with these younger kids coming with their weird, odd takes about movies that I love, that I saw, that they just weren't getting, you know. And I didn't want to become the old man who's like, you had to be there, man. You just had to be there. It was a different time. But how do you navigate those waters? You know, dealing with younger film critics, and does that bother you? Did the more the merrier? How do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, I think film criticism is kind of becoming a lost art on a certain level. Fewer and fewer media outlets, you know, keep a film critic on staff. And there's so much out there of just everybody, basically everybody's a critic. So everybody reviews, but a lot of what these reviews are, I mean, almost all of them have star ratings. I really don't like rating films with numbers and this arbitrary thing, because I feel like people don't read about the film. They just look like, oh, it's 5 stars, I'll go see it. Oh, that's 3 stars, I won't go see it. But films are more nuanced than that, and there are reasons to see films that may not be great. And I mean, I want film criticism to be about starting a discussion. And what I find is harder and harder these days is that people just want you to agree with them. They don't want to hear anything else. I mean, I posted something that was half joking, half serious, but where I pointed out that I don't think Forrest Gump is a good film. In fact, I hate it. It's like my epitome of the most unwatchable thing. And my idea of hell would be in a room with that on a loop. And, people are outraged. They say, like, what do you mean? Hundreds of, millions of people love that movie and it won awards. And like, if I like that film, then I guess that means I have bad taste. And it's like, no, like, I have a different opinion than you. It exists. Your opinion exists. We can have a discussion about it. Like, tell me why you liked it or defend your opinion. Don't just either call me stupid or say you must have bad taste. Like, that's not what I want film criticism to be. Like, I want it to be about creating a conversation about film. You may not change my opinion, but I'm curious, if you like this film, why? And can we like have an argument about it? Like, an argument nowadays seems to be like a bad thing. Like, it's disrespectful or something. Like, you just have to agree. And I come from an Italian family. Like, we argued about everything. And that was part of it. So, I mean, I miss criticism that is like really about how the film is made, what kind of social context does it fit in, here's why I like it. Tell me, if I'm wrong, tell me why you disagree. But, this notion of like, fuck you, you don't agree with me, I'm never going to look at your page again. Like, people tell me things like, you can't say you don't like Forrest Gump. And it's like, dude, it's my page. I can say whatever I want. I'm not forcing you to come here. I'm not telling you to read what I say, and I'm not telling you to agree with it. But, I think it's important for people to have different opinions, because that's how we get diversity, in our art. And so that's the thing, it's less about, I don't know, maybe it's younger people who've grown up on the internet and have been able to only seek out things that agree with them. Maybe they're, more prone to.
You have a trash take. That Forrest Gump's the greatest movie of all time. It's immediately, there's such an immediate backlash. You're 100% right. It's like, you can't disagree with somebody without them taking it 100% personal.
Yeah.
And they just, they just feel like, if you don't agree with me, there's something wrong with you. And you're correct. If you're talking about it from a perspective, Forrest Gump might be the most undeserving Oscar winner, except for maybe Crash. Recently. It beat Pulp Fiction and The Shawshank Redemption for Best Picture. Robert Zemeckis beat Quentin Tarantino, Woody Allen, Robert Redford for Quiz Show.
It was horrible. It was horrible from the moment I saw it. It's funny. I saw an article that said, "Oh, there's like a revisionist view of Forrest Gump," and I was like, "No!" Some of us hated it from day one.
It may be deserved effects. Maybe effects, because it was maybe mostly for effects. So you're Italian. So is it prosciutto or prosciutto?
Oh God, I don't know. I can't. This is why I like to work in the print medium, so I don't have to pronounce anything. I mean, I grew up in
Jersey Italian. Is it gravy or is it sauce?
I didn't grow up learning how to phonetically say words, because that was like when I was little. And I have the hardest time. Like I remember trying to say, and I'm probably saying it wrong now, Yakuza for a piece I did on the world. And my editor said, no, you're emphasizing the wrong syllable. And I must have said that word like 2,000 times. And she said, I never got it right. And This is why I like print.
Mozzarella or mozzarella. What is it? It depends if you're Jersey Italian.
It's good.
It's good. Don't worry about it.
That's
Is it capicola or gabagol? Keithan says, I'm with you, Beth. I'm still wondering why people think Top Gun 2 is great. I liked it.
I didn't.
I liked it.
It might have been better if it was made like 2 years after the first Top Gun.
Yeah.
But like, don't we have drones and smart bombs to do all those things that Tom Cruise was doing? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I don't know the military well enough, but
you talked a little bit earlier about list in terms of like ranking movies and stuff like that. I've sort of evolved, and I've been working on, because I want to do an episode at some point about my favorite movies, because I feel like when somebody says, what are your top 5 movies? What are your top 10 movies? It's almost like a cliche of what you can do, for example, like it, because for me it's like, if I really have to tell you my favorite movies, it's like Godfather 1, Godfather 2, Heat are definitely in there. But I almost think that it's almost like you should not put the super obvious in there. I feel that when I ask people for like their top, like if you're asking me, give me a few movies from your top 10 that aren't too cliche that I wouldn't expect, I'd say like I really like Basquiat. With Jeremy Wright, and from the 90s that I really like. For some reason, one of my favorite movies, Ed Wood, is one of my favorite movies as well. And what was the other one I go to? Like the Quest for the Holy Grail is one of my favorite movies, etc. like that. But do you feel that that's kind of overdone in terms of just like the emphasis on list and top this and top that, as opposed to just enjoying?
I mean, it's hard because, you know, you like different films for different reasons. It's like asking a parent who their favorite child is. Like, do you have a favorite child? If you have 10 children, can you rank them in order of, you know, who you love the most? I don't know. I couldn't, I don't think.
I have a favorite dog.
It happened for me, you know, a lot of it will have to do like on my mood that day, you know, like, oh, I'm missing my dad today. I really want to watch King Kong or Adventures of Robin Hood, or, you know, I'm pissed off at the world. I want to see the opening scene from Hard Boiled on a loop all day long, or, you know, John Wick. It depends what I want to do, or how I'm feeling, or what part of my brain I want to challenge. You know, do I want Shakespeare? Do I want comedy? Do I want pre-code? Do I want film noir? Am I feeling like the world a dark and dangerous place and want to just sit through 10 hours of film noir? So for me, it's really hard. I mean, people will ask me, oh, what's your favorite movie? I have a hard time. I mean, I would definitely say, you know, The Godfather, something by the Marx Brothers, something by Monty Python, Shaun of the Dead, some, you know, Scorsese. I mean, I gravitate more towards like directors. Like I would need something from this director. I would need something from John Woo. I would need like some kick-ass action film to lighten my day. So it's really, I find it very difficult. I mean, the two questions that I get asked the most that are the most difficult to answer are always what's your favorite film? And then after a movie has ended, what did it all mean? Or can you explain what this was? And it's like, I don't know.
What was the meaning of Nope? No, it's all right there in front of you, man. It's just, you gotta just watch it again.
But also it's like, everybody's different. You know, what you take away from a film comes in part from what you bring to it. And
well, don't you also think that some of that is sort of the especially, I mean, if you're talking about different sort of film people, I always talk about a film like was it The Vanishing, where there was a French version and the American version had like Sandra Bullock and like Kiefer Sutherland in it. And then spoiler alert if you haven't watched The Vanishing, 1995 French film. But in the French film, it's about a guy who he's on a road trip with his girlfriend, and he goes to get gas, and then she vanishes, and he never sees her again, and he's pining for her for years and years, and he puts up notes, and then finally the guy who kidnapped her writes him back, and he comes and he says, hey, if you want to know what I did to your girlfriend, you have to drink this. And then he fights with him, and then he drinks the juice or whatever, knocks him out, and he wakes up buried alive in a box. And that was it. End of movie. Fucking insane. But the American version, his new girlfriend comes to rescue him, and Sandra Bullock is like breaking over a thing, and they have to give you the happy ending and stuff like that. So, so I think a lot of audiences now are, because one of the biggest things that gets Googled is ending of.
Explain this ending.
Ending of Nope, ending of this, ending of that. And I really love the films that have the audacity, the strength to not answer all the questions for you.
Well, it's interesting. There's two film screenings I've done in my career that stuck with me, and one of it was Capturing the Friedmans, which was about a man who was accused of being a pedophile, and the Neil LaBute film, Your Friends and Friends and Neighbors. So the two things about these films were that after Capturing the Friedmans, the audience was split in half in terms of half the audience thought the guy was guilty and half the audience thought he wasn't. And the kinds of questions that came up were so fascinating about what people bring to movies. Like somebody said, well, the cop was obviously telling the truth. The lawyer was obviously telling the truth. And I had to ask, like, why are they obviously telling the truth? Because their job, gives them some sort of added weight. And they said, well, look at that other guy. His eyes were shifting. The young kid, like he wasn't looking into the camera. Like, can you think of another reason why a young kid who's never been on camera before might look less credible on camera than a lawyer who is used to, talking to a court? I mean, it was interesting to see like what people brought to the movie. And in Your Friends and Neighbors, I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a scene in which Jason Patrick is in a locker room and the guys are all discussing like, what was your best sex or whatever.
Was it Jimmy or Timmy? Was that the guy's name?
I don't remember the name, but
I know exactly what you're talking about. The scene. So
the scene is him. It's in this room. There's two other guys. They've said they're kind of cliched, like, oh, it was whatever, so and so when I was 16. But the camera is slowly zooming in on Jason Patrick. He's talking about the fact that he essentially raped a guy.
Yep.
And he's talking about how that was the best sex he had and was the best sex that the guy he was raping had. And there's no commentary in the film. Nobody says anything after it. None of the other characters respond and say, oh, that's terrible, or, oh, wow, yeah. And when the film was over, the post-film discussion, people were so upset because they said, why does Neil LaBute believe that guy who was raped was enjoying the sex? And I'm saying, like, why do you think the filmmaker has the same point of view as his character? And people couldn't put their finger on it, but they kept saying like, oh, but he said, like, the guy said this, and it was obviously true. And it's like, why do we take at face value, like what a character says? But, Neil LaBute was focusing in, zooming into a close-up. A close-up usually tells us like we're having an intimate moment of truth from a character. But that's not what he was saying at all. I mean, he was obviously critical of this guy. But it was so interesting in both those films to see the audience response and what they brought to it and what things they were absolutely certain of that I thought were obviously more like nuanced.
It's funny that I completely agree. Your Friends and Neighbors and Todd Solondz Happiness also came out that same year, which was also another, the kind of these relationships. But yeah, Your Friends and Neighbors, I haven't watched it in a while. I might have to rewatch that. But yeah, that's another one where he starts going into that. And I think it was Timmy or Jimmy, and he's just you definitely have to like be ready for that. Okay, one final question here from Keithan. He says, House of Dragon or Rings of Power?
I haven't started watching either of those. I am really slow to get into series because it takes so much time, and I have like piles of screeners to get through. So I have not watched them yet. Have you watched them, Keithan, or do you have a recommendation? One to start before the other?
I always have a list, because I think it's kind of weird that I don't think we should ever be bored this day and age, because I think there's just so much to do. So I always keep I'm trying to find my list here. I always keep a list of films that I haven't watched or TV shows that I haven't watched that I know I'm going to like. Just so that if I'm ever really bored, I can start that. And usually, like, I'll decide to watch one, and then, like, for example, Cobra Kai's been on my list forever because I know I'm going to enjoy that. I absolutely know I'm going to love that, but I'm also saving it. And then, like, for example, I had The Boys on there, so I watched The Boys before Cobra Kai. And right now, my list is What We Do in the Shadows, Cobra Kai, White Lotus, Severance, Lord of the Rings, Abbott Elementary, and Moon Knight, which I still haven't seen. So I don't know if I don't know if I'm gonna watch Cobra Kai first, or if I'm gonna go watch What We Do in the Shadows first.
What We Do in the Shadows gives me such joy.
I know I'm gonna like it, but I just have it. I did have season 6, 7, 8 PTSD for Game of Thrones for a long time, because that series literally took a shit. Hi, Karina. Moon Knight was great. I am going to watch Moon Knight at some point. But should I watch it before Cobra Kai? That's the question. Or should I watch it before Severance or What We Do in the Shadows? So I literally had just PTSD over the Game of Thrones ending. So I actually did a skit about this that I wrote a sketch about this that I'm going to film in a couple of days, which is about me going to my therapist to try to get permission to watch another show about dragons again. As it's like, oh, it's like I have the tattoos, I have the dragons. I'm like, I was all in on Game of Thrones. My used to be stepdaddy of dragons. But I did watch the first 4 episodes, and there is a ton of incest, but also very. It's good. It's not as great. The sets are better than the original Game of Thrones season 1. It's a little bit better produced. It's really well done, but it just there's something missing. There's an element of it that's just not interesting to me, but I will continue to watch it. Thank you for stopping by, Karina. Thank you for stopping by, Keithan. We are live with Beth, Accomando, from the Bronx, now in San Diego, talking movies. This upcoming September 24th.
Yep, 24th.
At the Comic-Con Museum Theater, Secret Morgue 3.1, When Animals Attack. 4 movies, all animal attack themed.
Yep.
Popcorn, food, noon to 10 p.m. Pizza. There's going to be scientists. A bunch of stuff happening. I have the link in the comment section for anybody that wants to check that out, September 24th. And also make sure that you're following Beth and her Cinema Junkie podcast, available on Spotify. Here it is.
I'm going to just move for a second and plug in my computer because it's telling me I'm battery low.
All right, we will do that. We will let you do that. I will thank everybody that's tuned in so far. If you are tuning in, make sure you leave a like, leave us a comment. We're talking about movies. Our question for chat was, is there a movie that you could only watch once, or movies that made you cringe and made you hate watch? If you have one of those, drop it in a comment. Let us know what it is. We are talking about, again, the Cinema Junkie podcast with Beth Accomando. You can find that by looking for her podcast anywhere that you find your podcast, Cinema Junkie. Let me go ahead and see how easy it is to support somebody. You hit the follow button. See how you do it, guys? Thank you. It's not that hard. It's not that hard. Let me see. Give me 1 second here. And right. Set up. And also, just so we're on the same page, feel free to also check out the Fireside Chats with Big Chief Burrito on Spotify and anywhere you find your podcast, as well as my other side project, Mi Gente Show, with Sofia Carrillo, which is more Latinx, Latino themes. Mi Gente Show and Fireside Chats with Big Chief Burrito, anywhere you find your podcast, as well as the Cinema Junkie podcast. So go ahead, check that out. Beth, you've been great today. Thank you for stopping by and having a conversation about cinema. I did want to ask you, well, actually, Keithan, if you're still around, did you watch 13 Assassins? Have you seen that?
The Takeshi Miike film from a while back?
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's brilliant.
That is one that has like really snuck into like my top 5, top 10 recently that I can't stop watching. The movie.
Oh, I was just gonna say what's so great about it. I remember I took my son to see it a couple times, and like by the end of the film, you're exhausted. Like you feel the weight of those swords, and you feel so tired. Like my son's always going like by the last quarter of it, like I need water.
Yeah, it's like a 45-minute samurai fight at the end. It's incredible, and it's such a great just samurai movie. But then he just can't help himself, and he just throws all these elements about himself in there that I think it's a masterpiece.
Yeah,
honestly, I think it's like if you're talking about recent, and I think I saw it when it first came out at the Ken, probably like 10, 15 years ago. We went to see that, and then I didn't watch it for a while. And a couple of years ago, I watched it again, and now every once in a while, I'll watch it. Other movies that are in that rotation are Midsommar, Come Hell or High Water, and Moneyball. For some reason, it's like the one. It's like I don't know why I really like those films. And Creed, I think, is also one of the best movies of the last 10, 15 years as well. All right, so one last thing before we go, as always, and this is something that we do with all our guests, and it is something we like to call the bracket bit.
All right, boys and girls, you know what that sound means. It's time for bracket bit. Bracket bid, bracket bid. Whoa, 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 whoa. Bracket bid, bracket bid. Whoa, 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 whoa.
Fireside Chats.
It is the last segment of the show, which means I can light up because I don't have to concentrate anymore. And we thank our guests one more time for being on the show with us today. I do like to do one last thing with all my guests, and that's called the bracket bit. It's basically just a this or that situation. I'm going to give you 2 different films or things, and you're going to tell me which one moves on. Since you are a fan, and since you guys are doing monsters and animals attack, I decided that the most appropriate bracket bit for you, since you are a lover of monster movies, is a Monster Mash film massacre. Now, the one thing I will say is if one of these films happens to be like your favorite of all time and it's not going to lose no matter what, don't tell me that, because then that sort of negates the premise of the entire bracket. You know what I mean? So if there's something you really like, just say, I really like this movie. And again, this will give you a chance. If there's any of these movies that you would like to expand on, feel free to kind of like pontificate or tell me what you like about this specific films. Are you ready?
All right.
All right. On to the bracket. And again, some of these, it's a mix. I added monster films, animal films, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So you tell me if you think I did the right. All right. Under the Monster Mash bracket in the first round.
I may have to put glasses on to read these.
Oh, I'll tell you what they are. So you don't
right.
have to worry. All right. We have The Thing versus Chud.
Okay. And this is Carpenter's The Thing. Well, it doesn't matter. The Thing wins over Chud.
The Thing.
I love The Thing. Both versions of it are great.
All right, we're talking. I did a little animal bracket here. Cujo or Lake Placid? Angry Dog, Angry Croc.
I'm going to go with the Angry Croc.
Lake Placid moves on. All right, now these are playing as a team. So we have Shin Godzilla and Gogeta, or Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein,
God,
and Young Frankenstein.
That is just brutal.
So this is a franchise versus franchise battle.
Yes, it is. I am going to go with Shin Godzilla and Gojira just because I feel they fit more the monster theme than Frankenstein's monster, which is more human. That's that because I have to grasp at something to make a decision between the two because I love both of those so much. So that's my rationalization.
The method you are the subject. I am the test maker. The bracket bit is created to create maximum pain, as everybody knows.
Yes.
So absolutely.
I just went through this.
The method, and you can use whatever methodology that you want. I just ask that you maintain it consistently throughout the bracket. Okay.
All right.
Again, franchise versus franchise. Alien and S versus King Kong. And again, the money sign, because when he pitched Alien 2, he just walked into the room, wrote Alien, added an S with a money sign, and watched out.
I have to go with King Kong.
King Kong?
I adore King Kong.
All right, King
Place in
Kong.
my heart.
All right. Big Ass Monsters, Pacific Rim or Cloverfield?
I have to go with Pacific Rim because I really did not like Cloverfield.
No, you didn't like it.
No,
Are
I had
you
some
not-
issues. I had some issues with Cloverfield.
Do you think it would have been?
I got a death threat over Cloverfield. Someone wanted me lock me in a room and blowtorch me.
Wow.
This is what I mean. Like, can't we just have a difference of opinion? Can
Absolutely.
I just say I don't like it? No.
Do you think it had to? Do you think it had to do with like the found footage format? Do you think it would have been more scary just as a straight up monster movie, or
there
what?
are a couple of things about it that frustrated me. The found footage format was difficult because it backs you into a corner, especially in a situation like that, where to maintain the found footage, you have to jump through so many hoops of like, why are they still holding onto the camera? How is the battery not dead?
You have to super suspend disbelief.
There was a film, I always forget if it's called Borderland or The Borderlands. It was an Irish film, I believe, but it's these guys go to investigate what has been claimed to be like a miracle or some sort of religious supernatural thing going on. But what's great about it is that they set up all these cameras and they lock them down, and they have headsets that have cameras. So everything is kind of justified in terms of why the footage would continue to roll and continue to, they would continue to have footage of these things where a normal person would be running for their lives, or no way somebody would be maintaining focus, or,
Why are you turning around and pointing the camera? That makes no sense.
Yeah.
Did you like 10 Cloverfield Lane any better than Cloverfield?
Yes, I did, except for the very end. But John Goodman was awesome in that, and that was a much better, I thought. And also in Cloverfield, I resented that we didn't really get to see the monster. And you don't have to show, like, I think Monsters, the Gareth Edwards film, did a really good job of like delaying showing the monster. But Cloverfield, I just felt was a cheat. Oh, wait, my battery is still not charging. Hold on. Go on to your next thing. I'm going to just walk over here and make sure that we don't get shut off.
No worries. And if we do, I'll just vamp until you get back on. All right. So the next one, and I think that there is like a whole different genre of like the kaiju movies, I believe, right? Let's see. All right.
What's wrong with it? Oh, hold on.
There we go. I'm gonna mute you for a second while you do that. All right, guys, we are live with Beth. She's reconnecting her computer. We are muting her for a couple of seconds.
All right, I'm sorry. I'm back.
No, that's fine. I muted you for a second because you were making a bunch of noise, but you're back.
Yes, because power was not coming through. All right. Okay.
All right. But no, I was just saying that the Pacific Rim, in terms of like the kaiju movies, do you think it compares with like the classics in terms of that subgenre?
I was not wild about Pacific Rim either.
That's better than Cloverfield.
It's better than Cloverfield.
Is there a better example of that type of movie that you would recommend?
Oh, shoot. What was that one called? It was the one with Dwayne Johnson.
Really?
Was it Rage?
Oh, based on the video game Rampage?
Yes, that was, I think, the best American kaiju film.
Really? Okay.
Yes, it had the right sense of like scale and craziness and fun, and that was a huge surprise. I went into that. I used to
love that video game in the 80s and 90s, though. I'm not gonna. Yeah, Rampage was a cool game, and I watched it. Yeah. I didn't even kind of place it in that like genre. I just put it like as a popcorn movie. But you're right, it has that. It has a big.
Jeffrey Dean Morgan was so much fun. Oh, I really enjoyed that. Yeah.
All right, we got more on the comedic side, maybe Monster Squad or Leprechaun.
Oh, Monster Squad.
I like Monster Squad.
You got more monsters in that.
You got a bunch of monsters in there.
Yeah.
Predator, or I wanted to get Ed Wood in there, Bride of the Monster.
I'm gonna give a little shout out to Ed Wood. Let's go with Bride of the Monster.
A Quiet Place, or and this is of A Quiet Place, The Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh, hands down, Little Shop of Horrors. Quiet Place really annoyed me. It was like a horror film made by Martha Stewart. Like everything was so neat and perfect, and all the lights and I'm sorry, but there's no way you can birth a baby without screaming, or without the baby making a noise.
The whole.
I laughed so hard at that scene, they almost kicked me out of the theater.
When she birthed the baby and then gave it oxygen and like put it in a tank, right? Or even the second one where they like go into this lead tank and I would never be able to do that just because claustrophobia. But all right, anyway, yeah, Quiet Place a little overrated. The Shape of Water or Tusk. And you said earlier Tusk is not really monster.
I'm going with Shape of Water because it's actually a film where the impossible love gets to happen.
Yeah.
The girl gets to fall in love with the monster.
She bangs the fish. A little fish banging happening in this one. Spoiler alert. One of my favorites, The Host or The Fly.
Are we talking Cronenberg Fly?
Cronenberg Fly and the Korean film, The Host.
Yeah. All right. That's really tough.
Maximum Pain.
I know it is Maximum Pain.
Well, The Host, I mean, it just the effects were even good for the time it came out, and it's like you said, it's a monster movie, but it's really about these characters and they're struggling with this little shop, and it's just
you care so much about those people.
That's why I was laughing earlier when you were saying that about Korean cinema and stuff. I was like, oh yeah, The Host is one of my favorites, man.
All right, I'm going to go with The Host only because I think it fits more into the monster theme.
I mean,
The Fly is more of science gone wrong.
I talk with a lot of filmmakers, so I always ask them if they feel that there is a must-watch list of movies. Like, you watch Nosferatu and, there's like a 4-minute shot of just shadows and stuff like that. Like, like I can't get through some like classic films, etc. But I do think that in terms of like a straightforward linear storytelling masterclass in like body horror, you can't get better than The Fly.
The Fly is brilliant.
The script is so it just keeps going in one direction. It's a single direction script. There is no branching off and B plots and nothing. It is linear. It is the most exact, precise linear story, like brilliant. Just single action, no fanciness, just brilliance all the way through that you can get. That I think it's a must for any writer or any filmmaker. I do think it's an absolute must.
And it is a romance. It is most definitely a romantic story. It may not be your typical view of that, but it absolutely is.
And it visually still stands up because if they did that today, it would be all CGI and it would all look like shit. They would be like, yeah, it would have just done that all in green screen. All right, moving on. Jaws or Creature from the Black Lagoon?
Oh, Creature from the Black Lagoon, because he's lovable.
The Wolfman or The Descent?
Oh, Wolfman. We're talking the original?
The original
Lon
Wolfman.
Chaney? Yes, I'll go with Lon Chaney.
Tremors or Swamp Thing?
That's a little tough. I'm going to go with Tremors.
Kevin Bacon. Can't go wrong.
Yeah.
The Mummy, the original, not Brendan Fraser, or The Blob?
Well, if I want to stick to the monster idea, I think The Blob is more representative of a monster than The Mummy.
How have you ever seen like an extra long standing ovation at a festival, or have you not been a witness to any of that? Because they had like a 6-minute ovation for The Whale. You're talking about somewhere like there was a 22-minute standing ovation. Like, I don't think I could do more than 90 seconds, no matter how good a movie is.
I don't I can't recall ever being at a festival event where there was like a really noticeable standing ovation. I will tell you that San Diego theater crowds do standing ovations for anything. If you read from the phone book, they'll
Yeah.
all stand up. It's
All
ridiculous.
right. Hey, that's good.
Um,
Fallback
but
option if
I
the directing
will
thing doesn't work.
I will say that I think one of the most memorable moments at a festival screening was seeing the pilot for Twin Peaks at Telluride, and nobody knew it was a pilot. We all thought it was a movie, which meant a movie has an ending. And so there was one unified gasp from the audience when it ends on that cliffhanger note. And it was I think it was like 9 months before the series actually debuted on ABC. And all of us were constantly checking, like, when is this thing going to come out? We need to know what happens. But that was a unified, like, as one being, that audience just went, what?
That's like when the To Be Continued in the Future came out after Back to the Future. The cliffhanger. I remember that. To be continued in the future. What? No, yeah. The Brendan Fraser got a 6-minute standing ovation for The Whale recently in Venice. But I think over there they sort of they I don't know, it's kind of like a status thing. They want to kind of feel seen, I guess, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. They report stuff like this all the time. And they also report, that films got booed and hissed for 6 minutes.
Or people, well, a lot of it was for Crimes of the Future was that people were walking out 7 minutes in, or like right away. That a lot of people were just like walking out on that one. But yeah, you're going to see Cronenberg. Yeah, there might be a little child murder. What are you going to do about it? I mean, get over yourself. It's a movie. It's art. All right, we got Mothra or Gremlins.
Oh, Mothra.
The little guys just couldn't make it through. Mothra. That was a tough assignment for the Gremlins. An American Werewolf or in London or Jurassic Park.
American Werewolf in London.
American Werewolf or Mothra.
Mothra.
The Blob or Tremors.
Tremors.
Black Lagoon or Wolfman.
Wolfman.
Shape of Water or The Host. The water bracket continues.
I am going to go with The Host because most of these monsters are, that's more, The Shape of Water is more of a love story.
Bride of the Monster or Little Shop of Horrors.
Little Shop of Horrors.
Monster Squad or Pacific Rim.
Monster Squad.
Godzilla versus King Kong. Hey, they did a movie about this.
Yes, they did. That's a tough one.
This could be a final.
I'm going to go with Godzilla.
Godzilla. And The Thing or Lake Placid?
The Thing.
The Thing or Godzilla?
God damn it. Godzilla.
Monster Squad or Little Shop of Horrors?
Monster Squad.
The Host or The Wolfman?
The Host.
And Tremors or Mothra?
Mothra.
All right, Mothra. We got down to our final four. Shin Godzilla and Gojira versus the Monster Squad.
Godzilla.
The Host or Mothra?
I'm going to make this a classic kaiju battle and go with Mothra.
I thought that Godzilla versus King Kong could have been a final as well.
It could have.
Yeah,
those are two of my favorites.
But Godzilla versus Mothra, obviously, I think we might know who the winner is here.
Godzilla.
All right.
I don't mind seeing Godzilla come out on top.
Yeah. Do you think
there was some tough calls there?
I always ask people, do you think that are any major omissions, like a movie that you thought should absolutely be there, but I didn't add?
For monsters?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it also depends how you define monsters. I mean, there's no vampires on here.
Yeah, I guess.
And there's no Bigfoot movies.
Yeah, I guess when I looked into it a little bit, just to sort of, it says like, well, the definite vampires are like their own sort of subgenre, I guess.
They're more the undead.
And then animals have their own sort of subgenre too.
Yeah, we don't have like, grizzly and
yeah, but I wanted to put a couple, so that's why I was like Cuja and Lake Placid.
That's a good selection.
That's a good selection. I do want to thank you again for coming on. think we had a good discussion about movie and about
Yeah.
your passion and stuff. And I hope that everybody checks out the Secret Morgue coming up on September 24th. I'll have the link in the description and everything. So I want to thank our guest again for coming on. I will see you guys on Thursday live for Mi Gente show with Sophia, and we'll be live every Thursday for Hispanic Heritage Month. Make sure you guys follow us, like us, all that good stuff. And I will be back with you in 30 seconds, Beth. Everybody
All right.
else, peace out.
Thank you.